backyard of Central America. I'm your host, Mrs. Warner. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Ancient American Civilization News Show. Today we will be featuring the Mayan civilization. Do note that all the notes and all the slides are available in your Google Classroom by a simple click. All you need to do is click to see the same slides and the notes where this episode came from. So before you email the host, reread them. All right, here we have for straight into the field. Let's get to the facts. We have our new geography reporter, Bumblebee. Bumblebee, are you coming in? Why, yes, Mrs. Warner, I am standing here in front of the Mayan civilization. Now, the Mayans, from the beginning of time, were farmers. That is what they did. From the beginning of time to about the year 2000 BC, they were pretty spread out. And around the year 2000 BC, they started to join together into farming communities like we see here. These communities were in southern Mexico and Central America, specifically the areas of the Yucatan Peninsula, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. Now, in about the year 250 AD, these farming communities turned into huge cities, as you can see here by the golden pyramids on here. From 250 AD to the year 900 AD, the Mayans, that was the golden age of Mayas. They had huge, glorious cities, as we can see here. Those were their best years. Bumblebee, what happened to you? Well, I'm done. Oh, you gotta sign off, Bumblebee. This is Bumblebee signing off. Thank you. As you can tell, he's new. Alright, in other news, the Mayans had a strict class system. This was something that is a common theme throughout ancient American civilizations, having a strict class system. We saw that in the Aztecs, and we will see it again here in the Mayans. To report on what this system is and their contrast fair government, we go to our reporter in the field of Spider-Man. Spider-Man, come in. Spider-Man has weak ankles and is again not standing up very well. We'll do our best. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. You're welcome, Mrs. Warner. Okay, so at the top we have the king, and the king stayed the king for his whole life. And then when he died, he would pass it on to his son, like a traditional monarchy. Let me just swoop down here like this. Okay, underneath the king we have the council / priesthood. That was made up of the royal family, and they really like to help the king. That's what they did. Okay, and then underneath that is the nobles. Woo, it's standing on my head. Spider-Man, focus. Was the nobles, and they're really rich people. Now these three classes, they make up the upper class. It's awesome. In the middle, we have the merchants and artisans. The merchants sold stuff that the artisans made. The artisans, they made stuff like jewelry and pottery and other cool stuff like that. And then they sold it or traded it to the merchants. And then the merchants would then take that and they would sell it or trade it with other groups. Like the Aztecs that we talked about last week. Yeah, they did that. These guys make up the middle class. At the very bottom is the peasants and the slaves. The peasants are basically like slaves, only they're free. But, sort of. So the peasants work super hard and they like farm and stuff. And then the slaves are from other countries, or well, not countries, because they're from other tribes and like prisoners of war, and they do the work. And sometimes Well, yeah, sometimes they die. Thank you. That's all. That's the class. Oh, and the peasants are the lower class. And the slaves. Okay. Whee. Thank you for that report. Thank you, Spider-Man. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule of saving people to teach us about the Mayan class system. Now, Spider-Man, as Spider-Man mentioned in that last report, the Mayans did have a polytheistic religion. To tell us more about that, we have our religion, we have one of our legendary reporters, Barbie Roberts. Barbie, tell us more about the Mayan religion.
Yes, as our Spider-Man had mentioned, the Mayans did have a polytheistic religion. That means they worshipped many gods. That's gods with a lowercase g, just so we know. And they felt that the best way to appease their gods was with blood. Now, often they would use animal blood, but sometimes they would use people if they didn't have anything else going on. It was pretty rough. They're not as bad as the Aztecs, but they're still pretty brutal. On the other hand, though, when they weren't doing that, they did have a fair government. For example, if a person was accused of a crime, they would be brought to trial, complete with evidence, similar to today. Here we have the king with his feathered headdress, giving announcements, and probably in the middle of a trial. And here's a fun fact, people. The Mayans also had ball games, which they would use their slaves for, because sometimes if they didn't win, they died. Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Barbie, for that report. And yes, we will learn even more fun facts when we get to our cultural reporter at the end of the episode. Now, as Bumblebee